The Judas of the West has closed the contract and will receive the 30 pieces of silver. Was there ever witnessed such a barefaced corruption in any country before? Andrew Jackson said this about the corrupt bargain of 1825 between Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams. So the 1825 election. I want to talk about the 1825 election because what would happen if Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton tied? Or what if one of them didn't receive the plurality? And so if one of them didn't receive the majority, that's how the election is actually written. Let's take a look at the 12th Amendment. The 12th Amendment says if there is a tie, then the decision will be made by the House of Representatives, which each of the state's delegation getting one vote. So every state gets one vote. There's 8 representatives, I think 8 from Kentucky, that goes to the House of Representatives. And so those 8 people would get together and decide who their state is actually going to vote for. And then there's 50 states, so that could actually turn out to be a tie too. But that's how it happens. So if there was a tie, this is what happened in 1824. Okay, so 1824, you had a lot less states, but you had almost the exact same thing. Actually, it was a little bit different because Andrew Jackson won the plurality. He got more electoral votes than everybody else. He got 99 electoral votes versus 84 for John Q. Adams, 41 for William Harris Crawford, and William Harris Crawford had like he had like a heart attack or something, so that's actually remarkable that he got so many electoral votes. And then Henry Clay got 37. And so that's, Andrew Jackson won, right? Andrew Jackson not only won the popular vote with 41%, but he won the Electoral College, which is all that matters, with 99 over 84, 41, and 37. So Andrew Jackson, won. And it is a corrupt bargain because he won the Electoral College, he won the popular vote, which doesn't matter at all. It's all about the Electoral College, because your vote doesn't matter. It's the electors who vote for you on your behalf to refine your opinion. Read the Federalist Papers. But that's the reason why we have this complicated Byzantine thing. The whole point, James Madison, was to prevent the masses from taking the opulent, to protect the opulent from the majority. So that's the reason why we have the Electoral College, to refine your vote. And then the Electoral College people are the ones who actually get to go vote. So the Electoral College, so what happens now? Okay, so he wins the electoral vote. So how did he lose the 1824 election? How did Andrew Jackson lose the 1824 election when he had way more electoral votes than everybody? Well, according to the U.S. Constitution, according to the 12th Amendment, what happens during a tie is that it goes to the House of Representatives. Or not a tie if there's no outright majority. So in order to get an outright majority, you need 50% plus 1. You need it. That's a majority, right? 50% plus 1. So he needs an outright majority. Since there's 4 candidates, 99 out of 261, well, that's less than 50%. That's with the Electoral College, he didn't receive the majority of the Electoral College votes. He needed 131 electoral votes to win, but he only got 99. So he didn't win the majority. And some people say, well, there's 4 candidates, and whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, there's this article, this all comes from this article, this 270 to win article, about how Evan McMullen could win. There's a guy out who might win the state of Utah, and he'll get their 6 electoral votes. And then with those 6 electoral votes, he could, he could win. And I'm going to explain that here in a second. But let me finish what happens in the 1824 election. So the 1824 election, it goes to the House of Representatives. Nobody received the majority. So they followed the provisions of the 12th Amendment, and only the 3 top candidates, okay, only the 3 top candidates was going to be decided. And since only the 3 top candidates are going to be decided, that means Henry Clay, he didn't have a say-so whatsoever. It was between William Harris Crawford, John Quincy Adams, and Andrew Jackson. But Henry Clay had influence in the Senate, I think he's a senator, right? So he had influence in the House, and then he throws his weight behind John Quincy Adams in exchange for a Secretary of State position, which traditionally wasn't the Vice President that became President, but the Secretary of State. Adams, let's see, Adams and his three predecessors all served as Secretary of State before they became the president. So that's what happened, essentially. Henry Clay influenced the election, got his supporters to vote for John Quincy Adams. And when it come to the House vote, okay, so even though Andrew Jackson won the Electoral College, a plurality, but not a majority of the Electoral College, it went to the House. The top three was being decided upon. And when they voted for the top three, they voted for John Quincy Adams. And so I'm not for sure. Okay, so the presidential election was in November of 1824, and then they eventually had this other House election on February 9th, 1825. And the first ballot that comes down, John Quincy Adams got 13 states, Andrew Jackson got 7, and then Crawford got 4. So, you know, John Quincy Adams, he got a lot of the New England states. He got Louisiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois, Missouri, and Andrew Jackson got Indiana, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina. So he won the majority, or he won the plurality. He got the most votes. I would be pissed as hell, too. I would be pissed as hell. He got 99 Electoral College votes. So overall, he got more votes than everybody else when all 4 people were there. Instead of having the House elected, I think ranked choice voting would do it better. Because then what would happen with the less vote would be redistributed, right? Henry Clay's name would have been knocked off, and then his votes would have been redistributed to their second choice. They wanted Henry Clay, but he was the last place, so therefore his votes would be redistributed. And then if there still wasn't a majority, then you knock the third place off, and then you see how it turns out. And then there's only 2 people left. And so ranked choice voting would have actually solved that dilemma. So that's what happened in 1824. Now, Andrew Jackson is pissed off. He says that Adams and Clay struck a corrupt bargain. That's when he quoted that quote that I mentioned in the very beginning about him being a Judas and that he got his 33 pieces of silver. And look how corrupt it is. So when people want to tell Donald Trump that he needs to concede the election that night, that day, in order to unite the country for the good of the nation, that's bullshit. Because Andrew Jackson, he was pissed off. He said it was a corrupt bargain, and he talked, you know, shit for the next 4 years, and then eventually Andrew Jackson became president 4 years later. So I think that would be a bad strategy to hurry up and say, you know, okay, I lost. Yeah, I'm the loser. I lost. Al Gore did that. Al Gore rushed out, said that he lost, and then he tried to go ahead and I don't know. He conceded. I don't know exactly the mechanics. I don't know if he conceded first and then try to fight later, but he already conceded. So what are you talking about? You already conceded. We all saw that you conceded, so you lost. You lost just because you said, okay, you win, I quit. And so I don't hate Donald Trump for saying any of those things. People say, Keith Olbermann was like, that absolutely disqualifies him. You know, as if like it was the worst decision ever. That's horrifying. That's horrifying what you're saying. It's horrifying if you want Hillary Clinton to win and you don't want Donald Trump to win and you don't want him to cause a ruckus. For him to just peacefully lose and then go quietly into that good night. So, now let's go back into what will happen to Evan McMullen, okay? So these are still the same rules in 1824 that it is today. And so what would happen with Evan McMullen? So you have Evan McMullen, he's the guy in Utah, and essentially this is his path to victory. He wins Utah, he deadlocks the Electoral College, and then he wins in the House. So if he wins Utah, he'll get 6, and then that 6 could take away the majority from one candidate or the other. And so if Evan McMullen wins Utah and he is able to take, you know, those 6 prevents Trump or Hillary from being the outright majority, or if they tie and, you know, he's got 6, then it's going to go to the House. And when it goes to the House, it's going to be the top 3 vote getters, and then every state's delegation will vote. So there's going to be another election in the House. And the election in the House, you know, will be between the top 3, and the way that Evan McMullen wins this, even though he only won 1 state, is when they're in the House, they'll decide, well, we really don't want Hillary or Trump, and so people actually wind up backing Evan McMullin out of nowhere, and then he's like a dark horse candidate, and he ends up winning. So it says McMullin essentially has no chance of winning the election outright. Utah's 6 electoral votes could be enough to block any candidate from winning 270 in the Electoral College, just sending the election to Congress. While people speculate about ties every cycle, this election may give us our best chance for the equivalent in a long time. The chances are very low, 0.4%. And then they said that there's only 1.7% chance of there being a tie or a denial of a majority. So for those 6 electoral votes to complicate the election process, there's only a 1.7% chance of that happening. And then once that happens, there's only a small chance for Evan McMullin to turn that around into a victory. But it's possible. It's possible, and he could do that. Okay? So it says when the House, the top 2 electoral voting receiving vice presidential candidates are sent to the Senate. So that's a little nuts, right? So the House is going to decide the president, and then the Senate is going to decide the vice presidency. So that'll be Evan McMullin could be the president, and then Tim Kaine or Pence or a Jew Mubaraka, it could be the vice president if the Senate chose, they could choose whatever they want to choose. So the Republican Party, of course, enjoys a significant edge in House delegations, controls 33 of the 50 states. Okay, so this is more the specific about today. It says it would probably not be a disaster. It would take, let's see. I think I've got the essential thing down, essentially. They said they might not abandon their nominee, but they also could. There's already 35 congressmen who are anti-Trump. And so the Democrats pick up a couple states in the election, while Utah and Nevada go for McMullin, persuade a few of the other Republicans to join them right away. Such a breakdown goes something like this. 26 is needed to win, right? That's a majority out of 50. If you get 25 and 25, it could be a tie, but 26 is the 50% plus 1. Which is what you need for a majority. So 19 delegations, 23 for Trump and 8 for McMullin. And then he says, then after that, the House doesn't give up. They keep going until Inauguration Day. At that point, if the House delegations are still deadlocked, because you need an outright majority. You still need an outright majority. You need an outright majority with the Electoral College. That doesn't happen. It goes to the House. If the House can't decide an outright majority, then what happens? They says that they just keep voting. So they just keep voting over and over again until eventually there is a winner, until one of the candidates become the majority. So, let's see. Whichever side loses in the Senate might have good reason to make a deal with the McMullin contingent in the House. So they're saying that possibly, let's say Tim Kaine becomes the vice president because the Senate chooses him, and then the McMullin contingent holds fast. The party-loyal Republican coalition may be pressured to accept McMullin as better than Clinton, who would win if McMullin's side states decided with the Democrats, right? So McMullin could be the kingmaker. He could say, well, I'll give you my votes, and then you could become the king to Clinton, or Kaine, who would become president if the House remained deadlocked. So if the House doesn't decide who the president is going to be, then the president is going to be who the Senate says it is. This is complicated stuff. This is insanity. Ranked choice voting would settle this entire matter on Election Day, that moment, immediately. But instead, we have this complicated Byzantine system, which was designed specifically to protect the opulent from the majority. That's direct quote from James Madison at the Constitutional Convention, 1787. So, let's keep going here. I'm fascinated, okay? So, while Pence wins the Senate, the Democrats may be pressured to accept McMullin rather than Trump or Pence, especially if they make deals for political appointments or legislative commitments. While this may sound shady by U.S. norms, it's not unlikely what happens in parliamentary systems around the world. So the upshot, however, is a bit bizarre. If you're pro-McMullin or anti-Trump enough, this scenario excites you, congrats, but unless you're in Utah or other states come into play, there's not much you can do about it. If McMullin cuts into the Trump vote enough to give Clinton plurality wins in potential red states, her victory is assured. In other words, if McMullin gets too strong, he could literally cost himself the election. The only route to the presidency McMullin can take must be navigated on the back of a dark horse. So yeah, that's what's going to happen in case of a tie, or if the Electoral College, there is not a majority coming out of the Electoral College. So.